What if your entire neighborhood disappeared overnight? Not because of aliens, not because of a nuclear war, but because reality simply broke. Now imagine stepping outside your front door only to discover your quiet suburban street has become the edge of a prehistoric wilderness where the rules of modern life no longer apply. Now, that premise alone had me interested. But what surprised me the most wasn't the dinosaurs. It was how much this movie cared about the people living on Oak Street before everything went sideways. So, don't worry, this is a completely non-spoiler review. I'm not going to reveal major plot points, surprises, or the ending, obviously. If you're trying to decide whether the end of Oak Street is worth seeing this weekend, you're in the right place. Original sci-fi has become surprisingly rare. Studios love franchises because they're familiar, but every now and then, something comes along that reminds me why I fell in love with movies in the first place, like Star Wars. The end of Oak Street isn't trying to be the next Jurassic Park. It isn't trying to launch a cinematic universe. It simply asks one fascinating question. What happens when an ordinary family is dropped into the impossible situation? Everything else grows naturally from that idea. Now, this is a movie that is willing to slow down and let its characters breathe before the chaos begins. Now, because of that, when danger finally arrives, it actually means something. Hi, I'm Rob, and this is A Constantly Racing Mind, where every frame tells a story, and if you're into sci-fi, horror, action-adventure, prop culture, and all things geek, you found your place. Here we talk movies, filmmaking, prop collecting, and everything that makes genre cinema so much fun. Now, if that sounds like your kind of channel, I'd really appreciate you subscribing. And don't forget to check out the Intelligent Filmgoers apparel. The link is in the description below. I also recommend downloading the Run P app before heading to the theater. It'll let you know a good time to sneak out for a bio break and near the end whether you need to stay for anything after the credits. Now, let's talk about the end of Oak Street. Just one more reminder, everything I'm about to discuss stays completely spoiler-free. I'm focusing on the performances, the filmmaking, and my overall experience without giving away where the story goes. The thing I admire most about this movie is that it never takes the easy road. A lot of studios would have looked at the premise and immediately built an action movie around dinosaurs. David Robert Mitchell had something else in mind. The movie starts with people. It starts with a family. It starts with relationships that already feel like they're under strain before anything extraordinary happens. That's a slower opening isn't there to delay the action. It's there to make sure the action matters. And for me, it largely succeeds. Anne Hathaway and Ewan McGregor do an excellent job selling this family dynamic. Nothing about their performance feels exaggerated. They're playing ordinary people dealing with ordinary problems until suddenly those problems become very, very insignificant compared to what's happening around them. I also appreciated how much confidence Mitchell has in visual storytelling. He rarely stops the movie just to explain something. Instead, he'll let the camera quietly reveal details about these characters through their homes, their belongings, or the way they interact with one another. It's subtle, it's rewarding, and it's something I wish more filmmakers trusted audiences enough to do. Visually, the movie is outstanding. Michael Gioulakis creates images that are both beautiful and quietly unsettling. Even before the larger sci-fi elements appear, there's something just a little bit off about the way Oak Street is photographed. You can't quite put your finger on it. You just know something isn't right. And once the movie expands beyond that suburban setting, the visual scale becomes genuinely impressive. The dinosaurs deserve praise as well. Now, I won't get into specifics, but I really appreciated the way they behave like animals. They're not villains, they're not monsters. They're simply creatures trying to survive in an environment where humans suddenly don't belong. That approach makes many of the suspense sequences feel far more believable than otherwise would. Finally, Michael Giacchino's score ties everything together beautifully. Rather than overwhelming every scene, his music knows when to step back and let the silence do the work. Then when it needs to become emotional or adventurous, it absolutely delivers. For me, that's one of the movie's biggest strengths. As much as I admired what Mitchell was trying to do, there are a few things that kept me from completely falling in love with the movie. The biggest one is the pacing. Now, let me be clear. Slow doesn't automatically mean bad. Some of my favorite movies take their time, but The End of Oak Street asks for your patience, especially during the first hour. Mitchell spends a lot of time establishing mood and relationships before the story really opens up. For me, most of that investment pays off. But there were a couple of stretches where I found myself wishing the story would move just a little faster. I think some audiences are going to absolutely love that deliberate approach, while others may wonder, when the hell is this movie going to kick into high gear? I also think the movie occasionally asks you to fill in a few too many blanks. Normally, I like filmmakers who trust the audience. I don't need every mystery explained. But there are a few moments where I would have liked a little bit more context. Not enough to derail the experience, but enough that I walked out with questions I wasn't entirely sure the movie intended me to have. And finally, while I really enjoyed the central family, I don't think every supporting character receives the same level of attention. A few of them feel more like pieces of the larger story than fully developed people. Again, none of these are deal breakers for me. They simply the kind of things that kept what I think is a very good movie from becoming a truly great one. One thing that's impossible to ignore is just how talented the creative team is behind the film. David Robert Mitchell continues to show why he's one of the most interesting voices working in genre filmmaking today. Like It Follows and Under the Silver Lake, this is a movie that's more interested in building atmosphere than simply delivering sensationalism. He trusts the audience to observe, think, and occasionally sit with unanswered questions. Cinematographer Michael Gioulakis once again proves he's one of the best visual storytellers in the business. His compositions are beautiful without calling attention to themselves, and he has an incredible ability to make familiar places feel subtly unsettling before anything that happens. Michael Giacchino delivers another terrific score, coming off Spider-Man, Brand New Day. Check out my review. He once again demonstrates why he's one of the Hollywood's premier composers. His music balances wonder, suspense, and emotion without ever overwhelming the story. Now, editor John Axelrod deserves credit for maintaining the film's deliberate rhythm. While the pacing won't work for everyone, it feels intentional rather than slow for the sake of being slow. And Patty Podesta's production design may be one of the movie's unsung achievements. The contrast between an ordinary suburban neighborhood and the impossible world surrounding it becomes one of the film's strongest visual ideas. Anne Hathaway gives another strong performance in what has been an impressive year for her. After The Odyssey, again, check out my non-spoiler and spoiler reviews for that film, and of course she started the year with The Devil Wears Prada 2. She once again finds the emotional center of a very different kind of story. Denise feels believable, vulnerable, and determined without ever becoming larger than life. Ewan McGregor brings exactly the kind of quiet humanity you expect. Greg isn't perfect, and that's what makes him interesting. McGregor has always been kind of great at playing flawed men, Trainspotting and Dr. Sleep, who are trying to become better versions of themselves, and that experience serves him well here. Maisie Stella continues to impress. Audrey would have been easily a very stereotypical teenager, but Stella gives her enough personality that she feels like an essential part of the family rather than simply another character reacting to events. Christian Convery rounds out the Platt family nicely. He's quickly becoming one of the industry's most dependable young actors, and once again he brings maturity to a role that asks a lot of him emotionally. Hey, let's talk numbers for a second, because the numbers themselves tell a story here. The End of Oak Street landed at 86% on Rotten Tomatoes, certified fresh out of 100 reviews. But here's the interesting part. The number's been moving when the embargo first lifted. This thing was sitting in the high 80s. Every wave of reviews after that nudged it down a few points. Not a collapse, just a correction toward the consensus. After I went and saw the movie and I came back, it moved up to 86. That's what happens when the first 50 voices skew toward the enthusiasts and the next 50 bring the room back to the center. And then, as more people see it, it brings it back up to where it should be. More will be coming soon. Now, Metacritic tells a slightly different story, 69 out of 100. Generally favorable in their language, but it's a notable cooler read than the tomato meter. And that gap matters. Rotten Tomatoes is a binary. Did you like it or not? While Metacritic is measuring degree. So what we're really looking at is a film that a clear majority of critics recommend, but fewer of them are calling great. And you can see that split in the language itself. On one side, you got critics reaching for Spielberg and Amblin comparisons. This is what the original studio filmmaking should look like camp. Some going as far as calling it the best dinosaur movie since the original Jurassic Park. Now, on the other hand, there's the real pushback. Critics calling it bleak rather than fun. Some flatly saying it doesn't earn the sincerity it's reaching for. And at least one review describing long stretches of dead air between the set pieces. That's not a movie critics are lukewarm on. That's a movie splitting critics into two generally different readings of the same footage, and that tension is usually more interesting than a clean consensus. From what I've seen so far, the praise has been remarkably consistent. Critics are highlighting David Robert Mitchell's direction, Michael Gioulakis' cinematography, Michael Giacchino's score, and the performances from Anne Hathaway and Ewan McGregor. Now, where opinions seem to separate is on the pacing and how much mystery the movie leaves for the audience to interpret. Honestly, those are exactly the kind of movies that usually generate some interesting conversations. Nothing after the credits. The only bonus scene is everyone in the parking lot debating what they just watched. Where do I land? For me, The End of Oak Street is one of those movies that's easier to admire than it is completely embrace. There's a lot that I genuinely love. The performances are excellent, the filmmaking is beautiful, the atmosphere is terrific, and I really appreciate that Warner Brothers backed an original sci-fi story instead of another sequel. Now, at the same time, I don't think every creative decision landed as well as it could have. There are moments where I wanted the pacing to pick up just a little. There's a few story choices that left me wanting more. But even with those reservations, I walked out glad I saw it. I'd much rather watch a movie that's willing to take creative risks than one that simply checks every blockbuster box. So, my ACRM rating? 4 out of 5 stars. Whether you end up loving The End of Oak Street or finding yourself somewhere near loving the film like I did, I don't think there's any question that it's trying to be something different. It's thoughtful, it's ambitious, it's visually stunning, and it isn't afraid to let its characters drive the story instead of simply moving from one action scene to the next. I'd love to see Hollywood continue taking chances on original ideas like this, because even when they don't completely stick the landing, they're usually far more interesting than another safe sequel. Now, I want to hear from you. If you've already seen The End of Oak Street, let me know what your thoughts down in the comments. Just remember to keep it spoiler-free here so everyone gets a chance to experience the movie for themselves. Now, did the slower character-driven approach work for you? Or were you hoping for something a little more action-oriented? If you enjoyed this review, I'd really appreciate a thumbs up. It helps more people discover the channel. And if you're new here, consider subscribing to A Constantly Racing Mind, where every frame tells a story, and if you're into sci-fi, horror, action-adventure, prop culture, and all things geek, we've got plenty more reviews. Ending Explained videos, deep dives, and prop showcases on the way. Don't forget to check out Intelligent Filmgoers Apparel, and you'll find the link in the description below. And before your next trip to the theater, download the RunP app. It'll help you avoid missing those important moments during the movie. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, I'll see you at the movies. Take care.